Hi everyone, my name is Joseph Nguyen, and today I will be talking about Asian Americans as the model minority. This is a sample lesson plan for a class to be taught in ethnic studies at the high school level, specifically Asian American studies. So let's get started. What is the model minority stereotype? So the model minority stereotype is this concept in American society that Asian Americans are a glowing example of a population that, despite past discrimination, has succeeded through hard work without complaint. So we've all heard stereotypes of Asian kids that are good at math, Asian privilege, how Asian people are doing better than other races in America, and despite being a minority. And this concept is usually used to say that they are deserving to serve as a model for other minorities, that despite having discrimination in society, because of their culture, because of their hard work and discrimination, uh, despite discrimination, they have achieved success in America, and is something that other minorities should follow. Obviously, this is a stereotype and a myth. So we see this picture in the 1980s talking about Asian American whiz kids, showing how all these Asian kids, because they have studied hard, they're going to places like Stanford and Harvard, and they're achieving higher income rates in compared to other minorities in the rest of America. So we have that model minority stereotype that Asians are the paragon for minorities in America. But why is that a bad thing? I mean, isn't it a good thing to be told that you are destined for success, that you are a superior type of minority compared to other minorities? Well, that may not be necessarily true. One thing that Dr. Aaron Quay Nin, a professor at UC Berkeley, points out is that the model minority stereotype puts all Asian Americans into a certain identity in which you are expected to achieve achieve this stereotype or fail. And so it creates a binary of the valedictorian versus the delinquent, and you're either a valedictorian and that is part of your Asian identity, or you're a delinquent and you are almost a traitor to your Asian identity. And this could affect the Asian American identity extremely harshly. For many people, there is a reason why Asian American mental health issues, especially suicide rates, are almost double or 3 times the national average because of this pressure for to succeed by American society. The second thing is also, like as the slide says, no recognition of heterogeneity. If you put all the Asian Americans together, especially Americans who came here for business from relatively richer countries like Japan or Korea, then you see that their graduation rates and their income are much higher. But if you look at all of the different rates, such as Southeast Asians, Cambodian, Lao, Vietnamese, their graduation rates and their incomes are lower than national averages. And so the model minority myth is just that, a myth that all Asians are doing well, and so they do not need financial assistance, and that they all share the same culture, which is problematic in many ways. The last negative consequence shown here in the slide is that is the way the model minority myth is used to put races against each other. And so a article by Chun talked about how the model minority stereotype was introduced in the 1960s in the wake of the civil rights movement, and showing how the success of Asians, especially Asians who came in 1965, who were not refugees, they were people from mainly higher middle class backgrounds, coming to the US and succeeding, and showing, and American society, especially white American society, tried to use that image and saying, why can't the blacks, the Mexicans, the other marginalized communities be like the Asians here? But obviously that ignores almost a century of the Chinese Exclusion Act, of Asian Americans before 1965 Immigration Act who came here as poor workers or train owners, working on the making the train railroads. They obviously were not the successful model minority, and so it is a selective ignorance of those experiences in order to create a divide between one race versus the other, and if as we learn from um, the concept of racial triangulation, all as these marginalized communities are meant to be pitted against each other, um, the Caucasian kind of race is put on top as they watch these two minorities battle it out. And so 1966, there were two prominent publications that created Asian Americans as the portrait of success, that this was the reality and the culture of Asian culture. And those two articles were basically popularized to the rest of American society. 50 years later, we still hold those views about Asian Americans and Asian culture in general, which continues to create this racial divide between Asians and non-Asians, as well as perpetuate the myth that Asian Americans and American society today do not need financial aid, they do not need help, they do not need welfare because they are all successful on their own. And if you look at this graph, it almost seems that way. Indians in higher education, 70%, Koreans 53%, 51%. But look down below at Vietnamese, lower than the national average, 26% only. And if you look at Cambodians, 14%, which is not, incidentally, is not mentioned in this graph, and kind of shows how many marginalized groups who are part of the Asian American subgroup are cut off or excluded from society. Hmong group, Laotians, Laotian Americans, their rates of higher education and income are even lower. And these are the groups that often become ignored because of graphs like this and the way that their individual experiences, especially Southeast Asians who were the product of war and genocide and were refugees in America, are obviously different from the average Korean businessman who came to America to start a company for Hyundai, for example. And so this was just a brief explanation of the model minority myth. I hope you like this, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you so much. Yeah.